Hi everyone, welcome to Tidy TV, where I bring the classroom to you. I'm Hannah John, and today I'm going to talk about what you might want to avoid when you're preparing for your interview. Stay tuned. Recently, I had the chance to be an interviewer for a position at an international organization based in Seoul, and I was one of three interviewers, part of the interview committee, and one of two external reviewers. And so there's a mix of internal as well as external interviewers for these positions. And based on those interviews, I wanted to put together this video about what you might want to avoid during these interviews. As a disclaimer, of course, these are my own personal opinions and they should not be taken to court in any way, shape, or form. And also, I do want to mention at this outset, all of the candidates for this position did a great job. And so it's not to speak poorly of those who had actually interviewed for this position, but just being in that kind of committee gave me a few ideas for putting together this particular video. I also want to mention that this position was not for an academic position or for a research institution, but it was for an international organization, kind of smaller in scale, but an IO nonetheless. Also, this was for a position for those with prior experience, so not one who is just starting to enter the workforce. So the interview is a chance for us to get to know who's behind the resume and behind the cover letter, and it gives us a chance to gauge whether or not you'll be a good fit for this particular organization. As I mentioned before, all of the candidates who had interviewed for this position were fantastic in their own right, but the biggest question, of course, was whether they were right for this particular position. For some candidates, actually, it felt like a lot of their prior experience might have been at larger organizations, and so the question might be whether they could actually adjust to a smaller organization and perhaps vice versa. So if you find later that you are interviewing for a position and you are unsuccessful for that particular interview, please don't take that personally. It might just be that you're not the right person for that job, not that you're not a great candidate. So that being said, let's go into what you might want to avoid when you're in that interview. The first thing you should avoid is not doing your homework. You should have a very good idea about what this organization is, what is its mission, what are the core projects and initiatives that it engages in, and most importantly, what they're looking for in this position. What are the qualifications that they're looking for? What are the skills that are demanded of the job? And for this particular case, because it is a smaller international organization, what you find is that one person might be doing many different things at one time beyond the scope of the actual kind of job description. So if you put that together, what are some of the organization's major activities and how would you actually be involved in your particular position? What are some things that you might want to showcase in your interview, that you're prepared for this position, that you're qualified for this position, and that you're also thinking about the organization and how you can uniquely contribute. I will also say that for those who are concerned about whether their background or their kind of credentials might not fit exactly with this organization, I think there are still ways that you can tie in your prior experiences to make you an ideal candidate during the interview. Another thing that might be helpful is also to show and demonstrate that you're actually thinking about some of these issues as well. For a lot of these interviews, they might not just focus on what the organization is doing well, but perhaps also on how it can be improved and what ideas you might be able to bring to the table. The type of answer you can give will really depend on your understanding of the organization, so please make sure to do your homework with regards to the organization, but also to the position that you're applying for. The second thing to avoid in your interview is any type of exaggeration. Now, oftentimes it's the first time that we have actually seen you or have worked with you or, seen you in any capacity. And so what we have to work with is, of course, your resume and your cover letter and any kind of references and documents that you might have submitted. And part of our job as a reviewer is to sift through and filter through your experience and your skills and to see if, again, the person who's in front of us is the person behind these documents and papers. That means that anything you put on your paper is fair game for us to bring up and to talk about. I just want to add this as a side note. The interviewers who are there, at least the ones that I've worked with, and hopefully I'm trying to be this way as well, we're not there to kind of scrutinize or to criticize every little thing. In fact, again, we're trying to look for the best candidate possible, so we're trying to bring out those positive attributes, experiences, and credentials that you might have so that we can, up your candidacy. So if you highlight things like, for example, language proficiency, it's very likely that we're going to actually test you about language proficiency. In one of the interviews that I did, one of the candidates had written 5 languages that this candidate was proficient in. There weren't any sort of test scores or I suppose, objective criteria to measure the level of proficiency, but because it was written down, again, it's fair game for the interview. And so of the 5 languages, I asked this candidate, with the exception of English and Korean, choose one of the languages that you feel most comfortable in and give us 1 or 2 sentences about what makes you the ideal candidate for this position. And normally there are 1 of 2 responses. One is they're either really shocked or really flustered. That reaction kind of has a range, like some burst into laughter and get really nervous. And then the others just kind of dive into the explanation. Hopefully you'll be on the latter side. But of course it might depend on the position that you're applying to, and they might not ask that kind of a question. But just as a side note, I tend to. If you wrote a thesis or you published a paper, you should be able to summarize key findings into 1 or 2 sentences. So everything, again, that you put on the resume and have it in writing and submit to this particular organization should be truthful, not exaggerated, and you should be able to expound on these without kind of hesitation or nervousness during the interview. Lastly, and this might be a little bit controversial because not everyone might agree with me, but again, this is my own personal opinion as an interviewer. Because this is a position for someone who already has experience, the one word that I tend to, not cringe, but one word that comes up that I might not be as comfortable with is the word learn. And so you're excited about this opportunity because you want to learn about A, B, and C. Now, the side note here is, of course, you will learn many things on the job, especially if it's a new position, if it's a new organization. Certainly, you'll learn new skills and build up your network and so forth. But this particular position was looking for someone who already had experience, so experience prior to applying to this particular organization. What that means is that we want someone to come into this organization ready to get going right away, or perhaps with minimal training. So if you emphasize that you want to learn, but the organization is looking for someone who can contribute, and this almost right away, then I might want to tweak your language a little bit to highlight those areas where you can actually contribute based on your past experience and your skills. So I wish you all the best with your interviews. Please let me know if you have any questions, especially about international organizations and how to prepare for those interviews in the future. And yes, best wishes. Until next time here on Tari TV, bye!